Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan, and today I've got a fresh batch of 5-star predictions for you. This is a video that I have done before and that a lot of people on BookTube have done before. Basically, I'm going to pick 10 books that I have not read yet that I want to read and that I think are going to be 5 stars once I read them. And then I like to come back and give an update on whether or not they were actually 5-star reads. And the last time I did this, I was not a very good predictor of which books were going to be 5 stars for me. I will link that video below in case you are interested in what books I chose the first time around. But I will say this time I put a lot more thought into it, and I've been reflecting recently on what types of books I actually do love and give 5 stars to. So I'm really hoping that this time around I'm a better predictor and many of these books do end up being 5-star reads for me. So let's go ahead and just get into the books. I've got kind of a mix here of books that are recent releases versus books that haven't come out yet. So I'll try to remember to include that information as I mention each book, but every single book that I mention will be linked down below if they sound interesting to you as well. So I picked 10 books and I went ahead and separated them by genre. And the first genre I'll go into is romance. And romance is not my favorite genre by any means. It's not my most read. And I have pretty specific particular tastes when it comes to romance. And so the only author that I felt comfortable putting on this list is Colleen Hoover. She is my favorite romance writer by far. I tend to prefer emotional, hard-hitting romances, and that's what she does. So the first book I have on this list is a backlist book, and it's probably the oldest book on this whole entire list, but that's Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I believe this might be the only standalone Colleen Hoover book that I have left to read, so I definitely want to get to it as soon as possible so that I can have her whole backlist done and just keep up with new releases. But from what I hear, a lot of people actually really have enjoyed this book. Kayla from Books and Lala just recently did a video where she reread her old favorites, and this was one of the only ones, if not the only one, that actually stood up, and she kept at 5 stars, which is a huge testament. And I know every time I've looked at the Goodreads ratings, people just love this book, and so I'm hoping I love it too. I don't know really what it's about other than I believe it's a contemporary romance, and I'm hoping it's hard-hitting and emotional like Colleen Hoover likes to do. And then my second romance book, again also by Colleen Hoover, is her newest release coming out next spring of 2022. It's called Reminders of Him, and when Colleen released this book's title and cover, she said that this book made her sad, which even though she writes sad, hard-hitting, emotional books, I don't think they typically make her sad. From interviews I've heard her do, it seems like books are kind of how she like releases her emotions, and so typically they don't make her emotional, but it sounds like this one did. And obviously the title Reminders of Him makes me think of, you know, loss. And so I can't wait to see what this book is all about, and I'm pretty sad that I have to wait, you know, so many months for next spring for it to finally come out. The next genre category that I have is historical fiction. This is a genre that I've been getting more into recently and been realizing that I do really enjoy it. And so I've been kind of trying to pinpoint my tastes a little bit better. And I think that these 3 books are really gonna hit me right where I like it and going to be 5-star books for me, obviously. So the first is The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. I recently read The Alice Network by this author for a video, and I really liked it. It's a wartime historical fiction novel that has to do with spies. And in that video, I mentioned that I think I really do like wartime historical fiction books, but I'm a little bit more interested in like code breaking versus spies, and that's what this book is. It follows 3 female code breakers throughout World War II, and because I've already tried one Kate Quinn, I know that her writing really works for me, her character development, all of that, and so I'm really just excited to dive into this, hopefully super good and hard-hitting historical fiction. And then I have a book called Luck of the Titanic by Stacey Lee, and this is a historical fiction book obviously set on the Titanic, and it's about a Chinese woman who stows away on the ship. She's not allowed on the ship because she is Chinese, but she has reasons for wanting to be on it, and I believe it's about, you know, why she's on the ship, where she's trying to go, and then obviously follows her through the sinking of the Titanic. And so I also expect this one to be super emotional, obviously, given the subject matter. I had never heard of this book until seeing it on like most anticipated historical fiction lists, and the cover drew me in, the title drew me in, and then looking at reviews, it seems like it's a really great book. And then the last historical fiction I have is called Ground Zero by Alan Gratz, and this is actually a middle grade historical fiction book about 9/11. I know a few people who are planning to read this book in September, obviously in memory of 9/11 and the 10-year anniversary, and so I'm hoping to also do that. I am sure this will tug on all of the heartstrings. I'm really excited to read a middle grade book about this topic and to see how it approaches, you know, such such heavy subject matter, but from what I can tell from just the synopsis and what I've seen from reviews, it sounds like it's extremely well done, and so I think I'm gonna love it and can't wait to read it. Then we will move into my biggest category, which is science fiction. And again, in recent videos, I've mentioned that science fiction is a genre I've always known that I enjoyed, but I never really dove into it as like a favorite genre. And in this one, I am still trying to find my preferences within the genre. I know I like realistic science fiction, as in things that don't necessarily toe the line between sci-fi and fantasy, and so things that are actually science-based I tend to prefer over things that are like magic system based, if that makes sense. But some sci-fi books that I think I am going to give 5 stars. The first one is A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor by Hank Green. This is a sequel, the only sequel on this list. It's a sequel to a book called An Absolutely Remarkable Thing. That first book follows this girl who basically discovers this huge statue that appeared out of nowhere in New York City. She makes a video about it and it goes viral, and so she then has to deal with not only the actual statue and like what the heck is that thing, but also with rising fame, and it has a lot to do with like social media and becoming an influencer and dealing with fame and all of that stuff. And I really loved that first book. I gave it 5 stars. This is just the sequel. I bought it as soon as it came out and I never read it, and I have no good reason for that because I do think it is going to be a 5-star book as well. And then we have a book called The Jump by Brittney Morris, and this may be the book on this entire list that if it's not 5 stars, I will be the most disappointed and the most surprised, because Brittney Morris is my favorite author. She has written 2 books so far, Slay and The Cost of Knowing. They are both young adult science fiction books that have to do with really interesting premises. The first one, Slay, is about a video game that is created by a young black woman that's for black players and kind of celebrates their black culture. That was my favorite book of all of 2020. And then The Cost of Knowing is about 2 black boys who are dealing with their life as they grow up into black men and kind of what that means for them having to mature and grow up kind of at a quicker rate than they should. And they also have to deal with some sci-fi, a little bit magical kind of elements too. I know I just said I don't like magical, but this book was done so right, and so I didn't even care in this one, and so far it's my favorite book of 2021. And so that brings me to The Jump, which is Brittney Morris's 3rd book, which is coming out next spring, which I would be excited for regardless, just because it's Brittney Morris. But this book is about like cryptology, code breaking, a cryptology contest, which again sounds so up my alley, and so I am so excited for this book. I think it'll be 5 stars. I hope it'll be 5 stars. I'll be crushed if it's not 5 stars. The next book I have on this list is called Don't Read the Comments by Eric Smith. This is maybe the most wildcard pick on this list because I haven't heard other people talk about this book before. Where I heard about it is on Twitter. This author replied to a tweet. The tweet was basically saying, compare your book to another popular book. Like, if you liked this book, you might like that book. And he said, if you liked Slay, you might like Don't Read the Comments. So I was sold. I didn't need to hear anything more, but it sounds like it is another video game, kind of virtual reality based book. So I love that. Also sounds similar to like Ready Player One, which I loved and obviously so many people loved. So I am hoping that this is along that same vein. I am sorry for whatever my hair is doing. I've had to re-put it up like 4 times throughout this video already. The next book that I have on this list is called The Space Between Worlds by Micah Johnson. This book sounds super interesting. It's about like multiverses, parallel universes, parallel worlds, which is a concept that I love and I love reading about in itself. But this is interesting because it sounds like multiverse travel is possible, but you can't go anywhere where your parallel reality self is already living or still living, if that makes sense. And so I'm assuming in this book somebody does that even though you're not supposed to, and things go crazy. I just don't think I've read a parallel universes reality book that I haven't loved, and so hoping it's a safe bet that I love this one as well. Then last but not least, number 10 is a book called The Queen's Cup by Jordyn Taylor. I recently did a video all about Jordyn Taylor because Jordyn Taylor is my name. She writes young adult books and I gave them a try and I loved them. She only has 2 books out so far. One was a YA historical fiction and one was a YA mystery thriller. I gave one 4 stars and the other one 5 stars. So obviously track record is showing that I should enjoy this author's next book, but specifically this book has been pitched by the author as a YA feminist mystery with a toxic competition. Normally the young adult tag might kind of turn me off or make me a little bit cautious, but not with Jordyn Taylor, and feminist mystery with a toxic competition sounds so interesting. So I'm so excited to see how she pulls that book off. So that's it, that's my list. As you will notice, there are no adult thrillers on this list, even though I typically say that is my favorite genre or one of my favorite genres. I've just found that they are too unpredictable to really know which ones are gonna be 5 stars and which ones aren't. So I just don't even wanna risk it and put any on this list. So that is all I have. I hope to be back with an update shortly after all of these books are released and I get to read them. And fingers double crossed that a lot of them are 5 stars. All of them would be awesome, but a little unlikely. But yeah, I will be back when that happens. But in the meantime, I'll be back, of course, with weekly videos as usual. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.